And welcome back to Punchline. Remembering fallen President Moi. Are Kenyans remembering him well, or are they remembering him accurately? Joining me now is ANC party leader and one-time vice president in the Moi administration, Musalia Mudavadi. Sir, welcome once again to Punchline. Given the role that President Moi played in your political life, would you consider yourself orphaned politically by his death?
Well, thank you, Anne. First of all, let me reiterate my position earlier that at this point in time, we must always remember that Moi had a family. And as we speak to his footprint in this country, our condolences continue to go to them at this particular point in time. I just want to say that the president did influence most of us. He mentored most of us. There's a deep sense of loss in Kenya as a whole at this particular point in time. But for those of us who worked very closely with him, there is perhaps a deeper sense of loss because the experience that we can now avail to the people of Kenya in terms of our role in public life, we attribute to his mentorship and to having had the opportunity to serve under him.
All right, so you feel a deeper sense of loss. Generally, there's been, as you know, an outpouring of positive tributes following President Moi's death. He has been described by some as a true African statesman, as a ruthless but emphatic leader. Is that an accurate description of the Moi you knew?
Yes, I think so. Of course, you must always remember that you have to ask yourself in what context are you discussing a particular individual, because certain circumstances at a particular point in time could bring out different aspects of one's personality. But broadly, I think that the coverage and the tributes that have come through have so far been fairly balanced. There are those who have been critical. There are those who have raised concerns about the encounter they may have had with him. They may have found it negative. Others have found it positive. But by and large...
You would call him a statesman?
I would call him a statesman.
Would you call him ruthless as well?
No, I think Moi was a very firm man in terms of his leadership. Ruthless, no.
All right. There are a few of those vocal critics you've referred to, like Kwegi Wamwere, Professor Makau Mutua, among others, who've maintained that he was simply a ruthless dictator, nothing short of that, who trampled on anyone who stood in his way, when it came to achieving his political objectives. They're also right, aren't they?
Let me put it this way. You see, President Moi was somebody who guarded authority jealously. He was a no-nonsense individual. That's one thing that is clear. And particularly when it came to public life and the public space, public management, Moi was very clear that you do not take those assignments lightly. Now, the context in which some of these things come out is that let us look at Moi before the attempted coup in 1982, and then we look at him post-1982. Naturally, as any political leader would do, he would want to consolidate if there has been an attempt to overthrow his government. So there were definitely some hard times and dark times that we have experienced in this country. Use
terms which others would consider rather mild, because when you're talking about consolidating power, to others it's frankly that he had torture towers, that he detained without trial opposition leaders. Is that something that was reasonable to you?
This is why I say that there have been some dark moments. Remember, Kenya for a long time was literally a one-party state. And there are positions that may have been extremist, that showed levels of intolerance during that particular time. But by and large, if you are to look at the retired or the late president broadly, you cannot really categorize him that. Remember, this is an individual who was always termed as a passing cloud. So to some, it may be a shock that the passing cloud did not pass as fast as they thought. And therefore, in the process, they may have chose that the better way than to discuss him is to discuss him in the context of a dictator.
President Moi, if he, for whatever reason, if he led Kenya today the way he led it then to prove that he wasn't a passing cloud, would you still consider that to be firm, good leadership? Would he still be described as a statesman?
You know, we have definitely globally and nationally, there's been a lot of expansion of democratic space. So we can see that in certain circumstances, Moi then operating, when he did operate, had a different style of leadership, and the democratic space was perhaps constricted to some extent. But
so it wouldn't be considered good leadership by today's standards?
No, I don't think so. I think people are yearning for some firm leadership. I mean, let's look at what we are beginning to see, where a head of state, even though it's supposed to be good for him to be criticized, but we are seeing people beginning to demean the office of the president to an extent that they ridicule him beyond what you might call reasonable parameters. These are issues that I think, as a nation, we may want to have some kind of internal dialogue.
You're saying Kenyans are yearning for firm leadership? What
oh, yes.
Firm leadership in that context then be?
Firm leadership, not in the context of people being harassed and what have you, but I think firm leadership in the sense that people want to see authority exercised judiciously, fairly, swiftly, so that some of the issues that we are experiencing now can be put to rest. Let us see some measure of discipline coming into public space as we talk to ourselves and as we conduct our public affairs.
President Moi is said to be buried on the 30th anniversary of former Foreign Affairs Minister Robert Ouko's disappearance, and this, of course, is one of the big blots, if you like, in the Moi administration, during whose tenure we saw countless disappearances and murders. Is there a need to revisit these issues and to give Kenyans closure on just who killed these people and why?
You know, Anne, perhaps this is, it depends on where you're speaking from, but Kenya has had a dark history. And if we go back, we will go back to the days of Tomboya, we will go back to the days of J.M. Kariuki, we will go back to the days of Gama Pinto, we will go back to the days of Ngala, Agwings Kothek. Subsequently, we had people like Bishop Muge. And of course, unfortunately, we also had people like Dr. Robert Ouko. Now, in all these things, a lot remains unresolved. And I'm not saying that two wrongs make a right in this kind of context. I think the investigative agencies throughout Kenya's history needed to have resolved these matters. But remember, as we speak here, and I'm not trying to defend anybody, but look at the situation of J.F. Kennedy in the United States. Can we really say that that has been adequately resolved? Perhaps not. So these
are you telling Kenyans that they should make good with the little to no real knowledge that they have on these incidents?
I'm just saying that these are dark clouds. These are dark spots in our nation.
Do they deserve answers and
yes,
bright light?
Yes, they deserve answers. And then at the same time, as we look for answers in this thing, let us also draw from it so that going into the future, we can go and live above any forms of intolerance that may be there in our society.
Finally, and very quickly, almost none of the $1 billion that were identified by the Kroll report as proceeds of Nyayo-era corruption have been recovered. Is it time that the government takes seriously this matter and pursue that stashed loot?
I think on the issue of corruption, Kenya has made its own strides. They have signed up to anti-money laundering laws. Kenya has signed up to mutual legal assistance programs or arrangements with many countries. And they share intelligence information today. even at a more advanced level than they were sharing before. So really, on this one, nobody should get away with corruption. And if indeed the Kenyan authorities, through the partnership they have with any other friendly nation where agreements have been signed, I would say
should pursue the Kroll billions.
That they owe the Kenyan people the right answers, and those resources would be good to come to this country.
Thank you very much for your time. ANC party leader and one-time vice president in the Moi administration, Honorable Musalia Mudavadi. It's time for us to take a short break. We continue with this conversation of how the nation is remembering Moi. What was his impact on politics? Why was it still so important for many politicians to flock and get that, if you like, postcard picture with him well into, his last year? And what is the impact of him exiting the stage? We're back with my panel after this. Stay with us on Punchline.